we return on Civil War Talk Radio, we'll warm up the Civil War time machine, a mechanism already familiar to our guest today, Robert Lee Hodge, and put him aboard for our final segment of Civil War Talk Radio.
Have you let your website go stale?
Wish you didn't have to wait for your web developer to return your call when you want to update content?
You don't have to.
Now you can easily and instantly manage your own website content using affordable Avalar technology.
Avalar is a website development and hosting company that provides turnkey internet solutions for companies like yours that need to stay focused on core business.
Avalar gives you the power to control your website and make updates and additions in real time without having to learn HTML or other complicated programming tools.
Websites powered by Avalar feature capabilities that attract more customers and enhance relationships with existing customers.
Avalar offers a multitude of leading-edge solutions, including lead generation and referral tracking, shopping carts and payment processing, membership management, and search engine optimization, to name a few.
Take advantage of the full power of the Internet using Avalar technology at www.avalar.com.
That's AVALAR.com.
Vitality is a natural expression of health, success, and fulfillment, and yet it's rare to meet people bubbling with vitality. That's because most of us push ourselves too hard, and when we trigger the internal alarms that tell us to change our diets, attitudes, or activities, we ignore them. Allowing outside pressures to override our internal alarms undermines our health, sabotages our success, and limits our potential. If you're ready to reclaim your natural vitality, to begin living a life you love, visit thevitalu.com.
You're listening to World Talk Radio, where the world comes to talk.
To speak with our show hosts or guests during the live show, call us toll-free in North America, 888-514-2100. Everywhere else, call 001-858-268-3068.
Welcome back to Civil War Talk Radio. I'm Jerry Prokopovich, talking today with Robert Lee Hodge, writer, researcher, part owner of Wide Awake Films, and one-time guru of the living history community. Rob, if that's not too strong a term, to suggest you were once sought out by others for your impressions of people and your
right.
ability to recreate the Civil War yourself. Let me ask you a question about some of the controversies that one reads about in reenacting and living history. One of the issues certainly is that it costs a lot of money to do this, obviously, to get the gear just so. And that means the people doing it have to be people who have some money, and it also takes a lot of time, requiring a certain amount of leisure time, and maybe the maturity to be interested in this hobby instead of beer drinking and chasing girls and so on.
Right.
So you end up with a lot of 40-year-old overweight bearded guys like myself, 40-plus, trying to create an impression of very, very hungry 19-year-olds in 1860.
Right.
What's your view on that?
Well, probably my view's been compromised because I'm 39. So
no more hardcore for you.
What's that?
No more hardcore recreations for you. You can't be a 19-year-old anymore.
Well, I can't be a 19-year-old. I mean, I can dye my beard if I want, and I can watch my weight, and which I think, with the obesity problems in the United States, I think we all need to somehow find a way to balance out the life behind the desk and just being healthier people and eating better. And that's not easy at times. I went on a diet a couple of years ago and lost 12 pounds in 12 weeks and, was jogging every morning at the Spotsylvania battlefield when we were planning the Spotsylvania reenactment a few years back, and just was being real diligent about, consumption of food. But, it is a problem. I mean, when you look at the movie Gettysburg, you run into some fat reenactors, and it just doesn't look right. And so, I think it's kind of it's a tough question. It's a tough call. I mean, I've seen people leaving, and it's because there were a lot of middle-aged guys that were, overweight and didn't look right, and they wanted to join, the person leaving wanted to join another unit that was of maybe younger guys and thinner guys or whatever. And, it depends, to each his own. I mean, there's no laws that say you can't do it. I mean, when I put on a preservation event in 2000, I wanted to do two things. One, I wanted to raise a lot of money for preservation, and two, I wanted to have high authenticity standards, which meant that you would probably wind up turning people away. Not that that would be something you'd be proud of, but you do, I think, with this stuff, with the reenacting and historical interpretation, you do have to create some standards. And it might not be a come one, come all thing, which can...
Well, I mean, it does raise a lot of interesting issues.
Sure.
If you're going to restrict the recreation of the 54th Massachusetts to African-American reenactors and not have white soldiers in a black regiment,
right?
Then maybe you shouldn't have fat soldiers in a thin regiment. You get the issue with women who are interested in reenacting. We know there were a few hundred, maybe as many as 1,000 women who did disguise themselves and fight in the war.
Sure.
But you probably got at least that many people today who'd like to probably more people want to recreate that than actually did it.
Sure, and I think that there needs to be events where there is some strictness. Now, I'm not saying that those events are the most enjoyable even. Sometimes just a regular reenactment that has like a festival or carnival-like atmosphere is more enjoyable than some of these, hardcore nuts and berries weekend excursions that can be less enjoyable at times. And, but I think you do have to have those events that say it's not come one, come all. And I think that gender has to be, approached. To me, it's nothing more than transvestitism. And I've often thought about buying a hoop skirt and going to events with my beard, long beard, and trying to go out on the battlefield just to make a point, because it is an issue. And the thing is that it also forces more of the question is, what is this stuff? Is it, purely entertainment, self-indulgent, historical consumerism? Is it interpretation? Is it honoring your ancestors? Is doing reenactments honoring your ancestors? I mean, if I could talk to my ancestor from the 4th Alabama Cavalry, and asked him what he thought of reenacting, I'd love to do that, because he might scratch his head and go, I don't understand it. Or other veterans would probably be happy that they are remembered. It wouldn't be one blanket opinion. But I think that reenacting, is kind of changed due to the Internet, and that is good and bad. You go to some of the reenactor chat rooms, and there's some mean-spirited, nasty-talking people that would not dare talk to you that way in public, but when they're behind their computer, and they might even have a false identity or something, saying some just ridiculous things, and it's just really, really hateful kind of stuff.
Now, do you mean in terms of criticizing each other's appearance and performance, or in just saying certain people shouldn't be allowed in, or what do you mean by?
It's all over the map. It's really regardless of the content matter, just the way some of these people talk that are on there, that spend hours on there. There's one gentleman I've seen on there so much that I'm like, how does he hold a job down, And then I heard recently he got fired from his job, and then all of a sudden it made sense to me why he got fired. But it's just the Internet is kind of a mixed bag. It's kind of like television. The potential for it to be a great tool and resource is certainly there. There's no doubt about that. And then the implementation of it is another issue altogether. The Internet, for putting events on, reenactments on, or historical programs, is a great way to communicate with people. It's toll-free, and in many ways, and you can do the mass communicating. But the downside is, I think that I remember in the 80s when I was going to reenactments as a teenager, and I would look forward to seeing people that I hadn't seen in months, or hadn't seen them since the previous year. And there wasn't this commonality of communicating. It would be a phone call that would cost money, so you did less of that, and you just waited to get together with everybody around the campfire and talk shop. You might talk about the war, you might talk about modern things, politics or sports or whatever, but it would be a lot of great social interaction that was lacking over the wintertime. But then with the internet, with the chat rooms, that's been compromised, because you can log in and chat away, and there's some people, like I said, kind of pontificate about this or that or the other, and some of the jaw-jacking gets old, and I've had to turn my back on the internet quite a bit just because there was some real nutty reenactor conversations that were just annoying and to the nth degree, and I started wondering, this is it's almost like a kind of a perversion almost. It's not it didn't really have anything to do with the Civil War, and sometimes reenacting really doesn't have anything to do with the Civil War. Reenacting sometimes has to do just with reenacting, and that in itself is kind of a subculture that at times can be very distant from the historical subject. And that's something that we always got to remind ourselves of, or at least I like to, is, what does this have to do with the Civil War? And if you're not talking about protecting a battlefield or preserving something, and if you're not talking about, authenticity or putting on a quality event, and it's just bickering amongst people, I have no room in my life or no time in my life for it.
Well, I think that I've heard it said there's no hobby or special interest too small not to be split by bitter feuds.
Oh, yeah.
Among participants, and sometimes the smaller the hobby, the more bitter the animosity. But you said something about your talking to an ancestor in the 4th Alabama, and a question I often like to ask people on this program is who they would like to talk to if they could go back for an hour. And often people I ask that question to have never really thought about it. Frequently it's authors, academics, and they have never really thought seriously about, well, what if I literally could go back? You, in contrast, as we started saying right at the beginning, people in living history seek that transcendent moment where you feel you are actually back, maybe just for a moment. Who is it you would want to? Would it be your ancestor that you'd most want to see in that hour?
Well, I guess in a way beggars couldn't be choosers, so I'll take anybody. But but I tend to would probably grab the kinfolk, the ancestral thing, of course, would be one of those connections. But there's a gentleman who was in the 17th Virginia Infantry who I'm a big fan of. His name was Alexander Hunter, and his plantation home, is where National Airport in Washington is today. And the ruins of the home are between two parking garages. They're still there.
Wow.
And Pohanka turned me on to Hunter. We were at 2nd Manassas walking some of that field. I guess that was in 93 or 4. And the way Hunter writes, it's just so incredible. At 2nd Manassas, this is, I guess, on August 30th, he goes, I dropped behind a dead Yankee or so, I thought. But the moment I fired, he opened his eyes and turned to me and said, Sir, for the love of God, don't shoot over me. I never fired a shot. And Hunter said, the more fool you. He showed me his hand. A ball had pierced it and entered his abdomen. I bound up his hand with a handkerchief and fixed his knapsack under his head and told him to keep a stiff upper lip. And the moment I was about to leave, he handed me his canteen with his unwounded hand, and putting it to my lips, to my astonishment, I found it was whiskey. But I took nonetheless a hearty pull on that account, however. And, and that's just from memory. I mean, I didn't...
That's great stuff.
It is. And Hunter does a lot for me. I really like Hunter a lot. And Hunter is a great one. Robert Shannon of the 2nd South Carolina is a great one. There's a lot of great guys out there that I feel a connection with. And so Hunter would be one I would love to talk with and walk the places with him. And also I felt a connection with Julius Franklin Howell, the 24th Virginia Cavalry, because his interview from 1948 has been put online, and it's an audio recording, and I often feel that connection with Howell because you hear his voice and he's just wonderful. Mm-hmm. So and at the beginning of the recording, you hear this like I guess it's about 48 when they interview him, and you hear this this fella saying, "Go ahead and talk now. They're recording you now." And you hear Hal say, "Are they sitting here?" And he goes, "Well, you can stand if you'd like." And he goes, "I'd rather stand." And he goes, "I have the distinct honor speaking to the public in this splendid building on a subject that's been handed to me carte blanche. I understand from the good doctor here that I'm to speak about anything that interests me, but I understand the public must be interested also. I have the inclination, however, to go back to my early boyhood, way along the lines of the early 50s. Well, you're hearing his voice, and, it's almost hypnotic. It was funny. I was talking with Thomas Cartwright over at the Carter House on November 30th, several years ago, on the anniversary of the Battle of Franklin.
Franklin, yes. And
I asked Thomas if he had heard this guy, and this is before it was online, so I thought I was a big shot with this bootleg recording I had. And I asked him if he'd ever heard of Julius Franklin Howell, and he said no. And I told him, "Oh, man, you got to hear this guy's voice. It's great. I mean, how many times do you get to hear the voice of a Confederate soldier?" And he goes, and then he paused for a minute. He goes, "What did you say his name was?" And I said, "Julius Franklin Howell." And he goes, "Wow, that's just really weird." He goes, "We have his cane and his United Confederate Veterans Medal in our visitor center."
Sometimes things connect like that.
It's amazing.
It is. It is also amazing in an unfortunate way that we have come to the end of our hour. And this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I've enjoyed it and learned a lot. I wish we could talk longer. But, Rob, I hope we can have you back on the show sometime, and look forward to your next project with Wide Awake Films.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And, everyone, thank you for listening today to Civil War Talk Radio.